Hey, I'm Hunt, and this is Hunt on LSU, your channel for LSU Fighting Tiger football talk. Enjoy the video. We want you to leave a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe right below the video. Enjoy. Unfortunately, we will start on a very somber note, as reportedly John Emery Jr.'s final season in college is done. Wilson Alexander of The Advocate posted a story here within the last 45 minutes saying that sources have indicated to he and the rest of the Advocate staff that John Emery suffered a torn ACL in yesterday's practice. Of course, we understand that John Emery suffered a torn ACL against Florida in November of last year. He rehabbed to get back from that injury. He was out there the first day of camp in a big bulky brace going through drills full speed and was going to be someone this team counted on significantly at the running back spot, and he was the most effective back they had in the game on Sunday. Busted two nice runs in an otherwise pretty pedestrian running game for LSU. When the dust settled in the ballgame, he had 9 carries for 61 yards in the game, also had a catch for 10 yards, and again, was very much going to be an integral part of what LSU was trying to do in the running game, and it appears, based on Wilson's reporting, that LSU will not have John Emery in his time as a college football player likely done. Now, look, you've got a guy at Miami who's in his 9th year, so I can't claim to know every single in and out here of the rules and eligibility and all that, but we do understand that John Emery started his college career in 2019. He was a reserve on LSU's national championship team, played in 10 games that season. In 2020, the COVID year, he appeared in 9 games that year. His junior year in 2021, he did not participate with the football team due to some academic issues. Those got squared away. He came back in 2022 and played in his 5th year in college in 2023. He played in 7 games before tearing his ACL, and then he was back this year. So you look at 19 and then 20, but 20 doesn't count. And then 2021, he didn't play. Then you've got 2022, 2023, and then into 2024. Again, I can't sit here. The news is fairly fresh. I can't comb through the entirety of the regulations and rules. This would probably qualify as a medical red shirt because he only played in 1 game. Does he have one of those if you've missed a year in 2021 and then you don't count the COVID year? Perhaps. I could see a way that happens, but that's really not of consequence today. It's just a huge bummer that John Emery has a season come to an end after just 1 week. This is a guy who has dealt with so much that I just outlined there. He's had such a long and winding road. And we saw after the end of last season, once he tore his ACL, he did briefly enter the transfer portal, and it looked like, hey, he's going to try to finish things up somewhere else. And now that he decided to come back to LSU, you figure he was going to be a big piece to what they were doing, and instead his season is cut short after just 4 quarters of action. So sincere thoughts with John Emery. So start another road to rehabilitation, whether or not he wants to play football again, whether or not he is eligible to return to LSU. Those are things that we'll worry about and that he'll certainly concern himself with moving forward. But the news today is that he won't be a part of this football team on the field moving forward, and that's a heartbreaking thing for a guy that's fought back from as many things as John Emery Jr. has. Now, what does it mean for LSU? If you were listening to the pregame show back on Sunday, I had Frank Wilson as my assistant coach interview of the week. And I have told y'all many times, I'm not trying to put a curtain up or anything. Like, when I go do these interviews with these assistant coaches, it is very quick. I go there generally on Thursday afternoon or Friday morning. I walk into their office. They're at the desk. We record an interview for literally 3 minutes. And I say, Coach, appreciate your time. Best of luck on Saturday and, in this case, Sunday, and walk out. Like, there's not a lot of small talk. I'm not trying to get in the way late in a game week while they're trying to prepare and they've got meetings and there's traveling coming up. And this is not a time for Hunt to dig in and pry and get a bunch of information. It's a quick deal because college football coaches' time is very valuable. So I don't tend to hang around a lot. But Frank Wilson's been around for a long time, and he does know who I am. He's gone through this process a few times with me over the years. So I did talk with Coach Frank for about 5 minutes outside of the interview. And one of the things I told him, I said, they all are a little thin on numbers at running back. He said, no, 4's fine. 4. He had no concern about having 4 tailbacks. He said last year when they had 8 at the beginning of camp, that's a recipe for disaster. You cannot please 8 running backs. That's just not going to happen. But he felt good about 4. Well, you cut that down to 3, you cut 25% out of that, and you realize there's a true freshman sitting there waiting that hasn't played at all. That is tight. And I think now, knowing what we know, 80 hours later from the time I talked with Coach Wilson, like, maybe it's not quite as good as it was on Friday. So this is a tough spot for LSU to be in. You've got Josh Williams, who's going to be your starting tailback. You've got Caleb Jackson, who's got a lot of talent, couldn't get things going on Sunday, but he's a guy that you feel like can be a real impact player for you. And then you've got Caden Durham, who's going to have to step up. His reps just increased. He's going to have to play. And I'm excited about Caden Durham. He is a legit track star. He's got unbelievable speed. He's a little undersized in the terms of his height because he's like 5'9", 5'10", but he's not undersized in terms of how stout he is. Like, he's a stocky back. He's got a low center of gravity, and he can really, really run. If you're talking about easing freshmen in, and we're going to talk about some LSU defensive backs later on in the show that may be asked to play, you're at a pretty good spot in the schedule now to start getting some people some work. Nichols is a scrimmage. This is a glorified practice with tailgating on Saturday. You can get Caden Durham 20 carries if you want. I don't think they will, but you could. And then you've got South Carolina, who I think is dreadful. I think they're one of the worst teams in the SEC. We'll get into power rankings in the second hour, but I think they're bad. Then you've got UCLA, who I don't think is any good. They didn't score a single point in the first half against Hawaii. And you've also got South Alabama coming up. Like, that's your next month. I don't think you play anybody that's any good in the next month. So you've got a chance now before the first bye, before you get into Ole Miss and you get into going to College Station and you get into Alabama and then you see Oklahoma on the schedule. Before any of that, you've got a little bit of time to get some people's feet wet. Against Lincoln Riley in Las Vegas under the lights of Allegiant Stadium, probably not the best time to toss freshmen right on in there. P.J. Woodland played, and he played his butt off, and but it's not an ideal situation to get guys' feet wet. Now you do have that opportunity. So if you want to save some tread on the tires of Josh Williams, you want to save some tread on the tires of Caleb Jackson, you want to try to get Caden Durham up to speed, you can get him as many carries as you want, especially this week and especially against South Alabama. You can't just completely throw all caution to the wind against South Carolina next week. Same thing probably goes for UCLA, although I don't think that one is quite as dangerous in Tiger Stadium. But you've got some time to get some guys up to speed. LSU's too thin at tailback. You're going to say, what about Trey Holly? I don't know about Trey Holly. Brian Kelly talked to Matt Moscona at SEC Media Days on the record about Trey Holly, and at that point, he believed that Trey Holly's court date was going to be within the next 10 days, that everything would work itself out, and that he would be back with the team for fall camp. That's what Brian Kelly told Matt on the record back in Dallas. That was in July. Obviously, we now know that the attorneys involved asked for an extension and a delay of that court date. It's coming up later in September, and maybe by late September, Trey Holly can rejoin the team. Maybe not. I don't know that you can count on that. They have tried, LSU's football program has tried to keep Trey Holly in shape and engaged the best they can. He's not at practice. He's not in the film room. He's not at meetings. He's not doing any of that. They're trying to keep him in shape so that if the opportunity presents itself and he can come back, that he is ready to do so in the best way that he can. But right now, as I sit here and we're in early September and we're one game in the rearview mirror and Trey Holly hasn't been with the team since back in the winter, I can't necessarily bank on him showing up and being an impact back for LSU. This show is now Josh Williams. It is now Caleb Jackson. It is now Caden Durham. Those are the guys. And you're going to have to find a way with three backs to get through this season. That is uncomfortable. I understand that 8's too many, but you probably need to have 5. And now LSU's got 3. So if Holly comes back and can give you anything in October, November, that lessens the blow a little bit. But right now, you've got those guys, and they got to get Caden Durham up to speed. And you heard me for 2 days now talk about the offensive line and tight ends have got to do a better job of blocking. But your depth is bordering on razor thin now at the tailback spot. So if you're just jumping in the car, what's on talking about? No, it's really, really rough news. John Emery Jr. reportedly suffered a torn ACL in practice yesterday, his second torn ACL in the last 11 months. Just gut-wrenching stuff for a guy who's gone through so much in his college career to have this season cut short like that is just really, really tough. So more on that as it becomes available. We have player interviews tonight with the LSU players. Brian Kelly will meet with the press tomorrow afternoon. Then he'll have his radio show tomorrow evening. So you won't hear anything from Brian Kelly on this until tomorrow afternoon, but maybe some reaction from some of the players today as we get some player interviews just before 6 o'clock on this Wednesday. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.